A lot of cool things happened between the Big Bang and Super Mario Odyssey. The Roman Empire is one of these cool things. One day, in some Latin city, a Vestal virgin was impregnated by Ares. He's also called Mars if you're a loser who has no friends. That Vestal virgin gave birth to Romulus and Remus, who were then raised by wolves. As you can see, this story is ridiculous. This is because Romulus made up his backstory for Aura. Romulus and Remus would then go on to found the city of Rome, but would get into an argument over Remus hopping over his brother's wall. Obviously, Remus went way too far, so naturally, Romulus had no choice but to kill his own brother. After Remus's death, Rome was now founded. However, the only people who lived there were a bunch of stinky dudes, and 0 females. Until... Rome had many kings, but only 7 of them were kinda interesting. Romulus, who was the first, Numa, who was boring, Tullus, who was boring, Ancus, who was boring, Lucius Tarquinius was boring, Servus Tarquinius was not very interesting, and then there was Tarquinius Superbus, a tyrant leader whose son raped a noble woman, which led to his entire family being banished from Rome and ended the Roman kingdom. Now that kings were no longer a thing, a new system of leadership was in place. Every 2 years, councils would be elected to rule over Rome together, set up in order to balance power. Unfortunately, sometimes 2 best friends would not be elected together. The new government was controlled by the patricians, while the dirty, poor, smelly plebes would get no say in the government. Eventually, the plebes did get a little bit more political power. If Rome is Goku, then the Samnites are Raditz, a lame villain that sets up the standard for the much more awesome villains later. The Samnites are also very good at losing, as they lost all 3 of their wars with Rome, and then were beaten again in the social wars. The big takeaway from these wars was that Rome learned to fight in the hills, which was the Samnites' one cool thing. Now that Rome was done conquering lame people, they could focus on much more cooler dudes, with even cooler stuff. A group of Italian mercenaries called the Mamertines took over part of Sicily. The Mamertines, realizing that taking over Sicily was too hard, they called for help from both Carthage and Rome. This could have made for a great love triangle, but after Carthage got to Sicily first, Rome started to worry that Carthage would control Sicily. So they decided to go to war with them, to take Sicily for themselves. However, Rome was at a disadvantage against Carthage. Because of Rome's council system, it meant that councils would try their best to get as much military victory as possible within a year, which led to many bad decisions made from Romans. Carthage were also some of the most experienced sailors in the Mediterranean, while Rome didn't even have a navy. But this didn't stop Romans from doing what it always does, killing people and taking their stuff, and Rome built a navy. Rome was quickly low-diffed by Carthage. Rome tried again, and this time they beat Carthage and took Sicily. This made Carthage general Hamilcar very upset, and he went to Spain to be butthurt. While Rome was in Sicily growing tons of bread, getting rich, and sailing around, Hamilcar passed down an army and his butthurtedness to his son, Hannibal. Carthage was at many disadvantages against Rome. Rome was richer, Rome had a bigger army, and Rome controlled their borders. This meant that Carthage could not leave Spain without Rome killing all of them. But Hannibal said, "Fuck that," and took his entire army over the Alps, one of the most dangerous mountain regions, something not even the Romans would cross over, just to sneak up and kill a Roman legion.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
Hannibal took impossible odds and made it harder and still succeeded. Hannibal would outsmart the Romans over and over again, winning 4 impressive battles with his military genius. He even managed to kill a council. This sent Rome into a panic, electing Quintus Fabius Maximus as dictator to deal with Hannibal. However, Fabius was very unpopular with Rome, as he had wild and radical moves to manage Hannibal. His most controversial strategy was waiting patiently. This made Rome very upset with Fabius, so after his dictatorship was over, Rome would charge headfirst into Hannibal. But Rome had a plan. They would get like this really big army, much bigger than Hannibal's, and that. Whoops. After Rome's crushing defeat at Cannae, Rome would be desperate for anyone who could help them, so they called on a radical leader with long hair, Scipio Africanus, who was also really cool, by the way.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
Scipio became Hannibal's rival, as they had a cat-and-mouse-like relationship to each other, similar to Light and L from Death Note, or Magneto and Professor X. This relationship resulted in a lot of boring battles that I will skip over. Ending the war, Scipio would invade Africa and defeat Hannibal's army once and for all. There's actually a third Punic War, but I'm not going to go over that. Only at the price of his luscious blonde hair. Hello, Miss Greg Socks, Latin class. I don't really want to finish the video and do like the whole like explaining stuff with like funny photos and videos because that'd take too much time. But here's what happened after the Punic War. Now that Rome like controlled the entire Mediterranean, they had like so much money and there were so many slaves and they were really rich and they were balling and they were making tons of olive oil. And then one bright Roman had the idea and he was like, who can I conquer? Who can I conquer? And then it clicked for him. It was like a light bulb moment. And he decided, let's just conquer other Romans. And everyone was like, great idea, dude. All right, the end.